problems. If you even just want to watch, that's fine. Just need to figure out, make sure you know what you're doing here. So on number 50, this was the homework problem. First thing we want to do in all these is write out the augmented matrix. With this one, it doesn't have a z spot, so it's just 2, 1, 0, negative 4. This one doesn't have an x, so we put a 0 in the first spot. And then this one doesn't have a y, so it's 3, 0, negative 2. So that's our augmented matrix. So the goal here is to get the ones in the diagonals and then the zeros in the corner. The first thing we need to change is that 2 to a 1. So let's change that to a 2 to 1. You're going to be multiplying it by something. You guys, let's drop that into here. So the first row, we're going to multiply this 2 by a 1/2. We multiply by the reciprocal in order to get the 2 of 1. So to change the 2 to 1, we multiply by a reciprocal. So that whole row, we're going to basically divide by 2. This becomes 1, 1/2, 0, negative 2. And then everything else stays the same. 3, 0, negative 2. So that's our first step. After we got this one, then we're going to drop down to the next row. We would look at this one, it needs to be a 0. It's already a 0, so we can move on to the next one. Now we move on to this one. So the order we go is the top one, down, and then over, and then down, and then over the right. We need to get this to be a 0. Whenever you need a 0, you have to do the multiply and add part. So we're going to do R2 equals. And what are we going to do in this one? Oh, sorry, I said 0. This needs to be a 1. Do a 1. So what are we going to do here? Let's make that a 1. What's that? Good. Multiply by negative 1/2. The reciprocal on this one. So multiply by negative 1/2 of R2. And that's going to change that to a 1. So then we'll keep the top row. This becomes 0. It's essentially dividing by negative 2. Divide this by negative 2, we get 1. Divide this by negative 2, we get negative 2. Divide this by negative 2, we get 0. And then we'll keep the bottom row. So we've got that one finished. The next thing we need to do is to change this to a 0. We've got to have 1s on the main diagonal and then 0s down here. So this work gets a little more challenging. To get a 0, we're going to start with R3. How do we change that to a 0? Remember how to do that? Yeah. We got to multiply another row and then add it to this one. So we're gonna multiply row 1, because it has a 1 up here. We're going to multiply row 1 by negative 3. So we're going to do negative 3 R1 plus R3. So what's going to happen is we multiply this by negative 3 and add it to 3 and get 0. What you might want to do, if you can't do these in your head very well, you can just do negative 3 parentheses 1 plus positive 3. And then you can just do negative 3 parentheses 1/2 plus 0. So you're just going to go through down the line. This is what we'll end up with. 1 1/2, 0, 2, 0, 1. All right, so negative 3 times this plus 3 is 0. Negative 3 times 1/2 is negative 3/2. Plus 0 is just negative 3/2. Negative 3 times 0 plus negative 2 is negative 2. And then negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Minus 11 would be negative 5. Everyone okay with what I just did there? So that's the confusing step. When you got to change one to a 0, you multiply one of the other rows by the opposite of this number. So the 3, so we multiply by negative 3 and then added it to it. Now the next one is going to be to change this one to a 0. So we're going to start with R3 equals, and then you have to choose the right row to multiply it by as well. Do we want to multiply by the first row or the second row? The second row, yeah. So we're going to do just the opposite of this, which is positive 3 halves, times R2. The reason why is if we did it times R1, well, this is a half, and it wouldn't work as easily. And if we did row 1, this would end up changing this when we added it. It would be a 0 anymore. So now we're going to multiply by R2. You can see it has a 1 directly above it. So we multiply R2 by 3 halves. That's going to make this positive 3 halves. And then we add it to negative 3 halves. So we go 0 plus R2. So whatever one we're changing, we always have to have that one. And again, use your calculator if that's hard for you. Keep the first 2 rows the same. All right, and then this last row, we're going to do negative 3 halves times 0 plus 0 is 0. 3 halves plus negative 3 halves is 0. Here we have to do negative 2 times 3 halves. You might even want to just write that one out. Negative 2 times 3 halves plus negative 2. Just kind of following this formula. You can also do that in your calculator if you want to. And you'll get negative 5. These cancel, gives you negative 3 plus negative 2. It's negative 5. And here we have 0 times 3 halves plus negative 5, which is negative 5. So if you attempted this, try to follow along too and see maybe where you messed up if you didn't get the final answer. There's just like one wrong sign can mess up everything. So, and then also it's a good idea to work with a partner too, which is what I'm going to encourage you to do. So you can like be on the same step and figure out if someone messes up. Last step is to change this to a 1. Yeah. Yeah. Change that to a 1. So how do we change that to a 1? Yeah, multiply by negative 1/5. So we say R3 is negative 1/5 R3. And this multiplied by the reciprocal. So we'll keep the top 2 rows. And then we just multiply these all by negative 1/5. This is 0, this is 0. This becomes positive 1, and that becomes positive 1. And now we've got the right form we're looking for. This is called a row echelon form with the 1s at the diagonal, the 0s here. When we get to here, we're going to rewrite out the equation. This is my x, this is my y, this is the z column. So it's just 1x plus a half y. No z, so I'm not going to write it. Equals negative 2. Here there's no x's, just y minus 2z equals 0. And the last one, no x's or y's, is just 1z, z equals 1. So we have z. We take this and we're going to plug it in the equation above it. We get y. So y minus 2 times 1 equals 0. And then y minus 2 is 0. Add it over. Y is 2. And then we're going to take this answer and we're going to plug it into this equation. We get x. So x plus 1/2 times 2. 2. And we get x plus 1 equals negative 2. Subtract the 1 over. Yeah. So then we have negative 3 to takes a lot of work to get to the right final answer. You gotta do a lot of things right. I wanted to do one more. So you can just either write it down or just follow along if you want to. And think about like what the steps are. Because you've got to come up with these R values in the operation. So think ahead, think about what the operation is going to be that we're going to end up doing. And because you're going to do this on your own in just a minute. And then we're going to start by writing out the matrix first. This one does have every variable, so we're not going to have any zeros in this one. 1, 2, 3. So the first thing to notice is our first one's already good. There's already a 1 there. Right? So then we drop down to the next row, drop down here, and we need to make this one a 0. To make anything a 0, that's where we got to multiply and add to change something to the 0. So start with R2 because that's the one we're working on. And we got to think, well, what do we multiply row 1 by and then add it to R2? What would we multiply by? Yeah, -2. Just the opposite sign of that. -2 R1 plus R2. -2 times this would be -2, and then we add it to 2, we get 0. So we'll keep the first row. -2 times 1 plus 2 is 0. -2 times -2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. -2 times 3 is -6. Plus 1 is -5. -2 times 7 is -14. Plus 4 is -10. And then we keep the other row. Next thing is to change this to a 1. Get our 1s in the back. Anytime you change it to a 1, you're just going to multiply it by something. So we're going to say R2 equals, and then what do we multiply by? Yep, 1/5. The reciprocal of this. So 1/5 R2. Which means we just go through and we divide all of these by 5. We get 0, 1, -1, -2. It's just multiplying all these by a 5th. So then we just divide them by 5. So 1, 2. Use the last row. So this row is good, this row is good. Now we need to drop down to this one. That needs to be a 0, which means we're going to multiply and add. We're in row 3. What are we going to multiply? Sorry, formula there. R1 by 3, because then this will become 3, adding -3, which is 0. So 3R1 plus R3. So we'll keep the first 2 rows. So 3 times R1 is 3, plus -3 is 0. 3 times -2 is -6. Plus 2 is -4. 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 2 is 7. 3 times 7 is 21. Minus 10 is 11. Now we're going to this one. It has to be a 0 as well. So we're going to be doing our 3 equals, and this time we're going to use row 2 because it has a 1 right above it. So it's going to be 4, which is the opposite sign. 4R2 plus R3. Keep the first 2 rows. This will stay 0. 4 plus negative 4 is 0. Negative 4 plus 7 is 3. And then negative 8 plus negative 11. This is 3. Wrong. So we divided. Should be negative 3, I think. Actually, this is supposed to be negative 3. I can't figure out where it's messed up. So it'd be negative 8 plus negative 11 doesn't seem right. It's only the third time I've done this problem here. Anybody see where I made a mistake? That's supposed to keep me honest here. Oh yeah, that's it. Well, so we'll look at 8. Let's go through. Check this stuff real quick. If it doesn't divide evenly, that's generally good. So how I can tell that I made a mistake, let me show you. So this would be negative 8 and negative 11. This is going to be negative 19. And then I'm going to divide by 3 and tell that wasn't going to be right. So take a step back and see if I can find where it is. Negative 6. 14. Divide by 2. Oh, this should be positive 11. All right, there we go. Because this is 3 times 7 and minus 10 would be 21 minus 10 is going to be positive 11. All right. Oh. Positive 11, and then 8 is 3. Alright, back to
Positive or negative?
It's positive because it's 11, and then we did what? So negative. So it's 4. It was 4 times that. It's 4 times negative 2 would be negative 8, and then plus 11 would be 3. I mean, you'll be able to check yourself at the end if it works in the equation. But I'll tell you if it'll be whole numbers. The main problem I want you to do is get whole numbers. So. All right, so the last step, R3, we want to multiply it by 1/3. So 1/3 R3. So those are both 0. This is 1 and this is 1. Alright, so once we get to this point, we want to write out our equations. X equals 2y plus 3z equals 7. And this is y minus z equals negative 2. Then y equals z equals 1. So we got our first one. We're going to plug this one into here. So y minus 1 equals negative 2. Add it over. So y equals negative 1. And then this one, since the first equation has both of them, we got to plug both of them in. You got to plug that one in there, and then plug the z in here. So plug both in to get the final answer. x minus 2 times negative 1 plus 3 times 1 equals 7. So this becomes x plus 2 plus 3 equals 7. X plus 5 is 7, so x is 2. And then so our answer is 2, negative 1, 1. And then if you want to check your answer, you plug it in. 2 minus 2 times negative 1 becomes plus 2. 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. Do 4 minus 1 is 3. Plus 1 is 4. 1 was 4. You plug it all in there. But like I said, it's a good idea to work with a partner so like they can maybe catch like if you messed up a sign or something. So try to find a partner to do this with. We have the rest of the class. You can ask me questions if you're stuck too. I want you to try. I'm going to give you 2 of them, but I want you to definitely try to get this one. This one has whole number answers. This one has 2 of the answers are fractions, so a little bit harder. So do this one. Try this one. Try number 62, but I definitely want you to try to solve 60. You're gonna